Hi, I'm Congressman Joe Morelle. I have the great privilege of representing New York's 25th Congressional District, which is Rochester and Monroe County. And we're here to have a really interesting conversation with a guest who's here to talk about, among other things, the solar eclipse, which is going to be a full solar eclipse over the Rochester on April 8th, which is coming up. So we're delighted to have with us for this conversation Dr. Grant Tremblay, who is, among other, well, I'll let you tell the story, but is a astrophysicist, like a rocket scientist almost. Yeah. Astrophysicist, you know, sort of. But really exciting things. I'm really delighted to have you here with us to talk a little bit, not only about the solar eclipse, but why exploration is so important, why science 100%. Investment is so important. But why don't we start by, I just want to ask you a little bit about your background, because you have an interesting connection to Rochester.
Sure thing, Congressman Morelle. It's a total honor to be with you. I'm so excited that you're excited about the forthcoming eclipse on April 8th in our beloved city of Rochester. So I'm an astrophysicist at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But Rochester is really in my heart because I'm a U of R, University of Rochester undergrad alum, 2006, just turned 40. And I got my PhD at RIT very proudly, deep in my heart in 2011.
So tell me, I'm sort of curious, at what age did you know you wanted to do something that related to astrophysics and this kind of work? Was it much later in life, or were you interested as a kid?
We're so lucky in astronomy in that the global public so effortlessly shares in our wonderment of the cosmos. Every kid just instantly and easily wants to know more about the skies beyond, right? And so I was a kid. Just really loved space, and before I knew what an astrophysicist was, I wanted to be one, and so that was my life's dream. And Rochester really enabled me to do that because of Rochester's immense centers for innovation, our wonderful universities, and that's why it's such a big part of my life.
Well, that's great, and I think you're right. I mean, clearly going back to the ancients, had questions about the world, and when they'd look up at the sky at night, when they didn't have movies to watch and shows to stream, they wondered about the cosmos and what relationship we had to it. So it's really, I think, probably something that's fascinated people since literally the dawn of time.
You know, we build space telescopes, big, expensive machines. Why do we do this, right? And it's much more than just about writing galaxy luminosity functions and understanding black holes. I have 3 kids, right? 3 kids under the age of 5. And the saddest sort of thing of my life is watching them get older. And when you're born, everything is magical, right? From peanut butter to rainstorms to the first time they meet a dog. And as you get older, like that magic of the world is kind of sucked away from you, right? And one thing that cosmic discovery does, especially US taxpayer investment in cosmic discovery, is it shows not only children, but the national and global public that nature is as magical as you once believed as kids, right? We point great mirrors into the darkness of space, and we return, you know, majestic cathedrals like nebula that you have to paint with, like, you know, a paintbrush dipped in every color, right?
No, it is really extraordinary, and not only Hubble before it, but the James Webb Space Telescope has rendered, to your point, these majestic views of the universe in different light, and it's really extraordinary.
NASA's great observatories have enabled more advancements in our understanding of the universe in the last 30 years than they have in the last 30,000 years of astronomical history. And I bet you know this, Rochester has its own great observatory. It's called the Chandra X-ray Observatory, launched in 1999. And at its heart is the most exquisite X-ray optic ever built. And that was assembled and aligned in Rochester, New York. And so Rochester has its own great observatory flying in space right now, and it is enabling enormous synergy with the James Webb Space Telescope.
Well, and you've obviously, you know, done a lot of work in this space, and I don't think sometimes people from Rochester fully realize what jewels we have, both in our university systems and some of the companies, including L3Harris, which had a lot to do with the James Webb telescope, and the latest one.
Roman,
Roman
L3Harris is a major partner in Roman. They'll be a major partner in future X-ray observatories. Yeah, as you know, our city has a incredibly proud heritage in optics, right?
Oh.
And newsflash to your audience, they all know this, but we can't actually travel to the things we study, right?
Right.
I'm one of my favorite
Not
galaxies.
yet, anyway.
Not yet, anyway. And I hate to disappoint you, but one of my favorite galaxies is 230 million light years away. We're not going anywhere soon, right? So we can only study them by building optics that bounce particles of light, photons, right? And so optics, the heritage of optics and photonics in Rochester is an enabling core competency of our nation and frankly the globe.
And it's one of the reasons that I started the Congressional
the
Caucus
caucus.
on Optics and Photonics.
100%.
Because it is such an important, people, I don't think, again, fully appreciate in Rochester how many jobs have been created and how many jobs will continue to be created in that space. Before we go too much further, though, we have a big event coming up across the world, but we're in the path of totality, I think is what they call it in Rochester.
That's right.
Which is the solar eclipse on April 8th.
Yeah.
Why should people be excited? I mean, it clearly is generating
Yeah.
all kinds of excitement and interest. I remember the last eclipse in 2017, which I think we were about 3/4 totality.
Yep, you weren't quite there. Yep.
We weren't quite there, but this one we will be in the path.
Yep.
Why do you suppose this captures the imagination of people so much?
Yeah. Look, it's just a shadow, right? It's just the shadow of the moon casting on the Earth, the sun backlighting and casting a shadow on the Earth. It is hard to overstate what totality really looks like. It is the most cosmically spectacular shadow you will ever see, right? So on April 8th at 3:20 p.m. in our beloved city of Rochester, for 3 minutes and 38 seconds, I have it off the top of my head, about roughly 3 minutes, 38 seconds, the moon, which is 400 times smaller than the sun, will pass in front of the sun. But the sun, which happens to be 400 times larger than the moon, is also about 400 times further away.
So it's about 93 million miles as opposed to about 250,000 miles.
Exactly right.
As I recall.
Exactly right. Sun is 93 million miles away. The moon is 400 times closer than that, about 260,000 miles. But what that means is that the angular size that those two disks subtend on the sky is almost exactly the same, right? It's pure coincidence, it's an accident of nature, but it is the most miraculous accident of nature. Because what will happen is for those 3 minutes and 38 seconds, I gotta make sure I got that right, it's roughly that.
It's really close to that,
the moon will block out the main disk of the sun.
And you'll see basically just the corona, right, if you were to look at it.
You will see the majestic crown of the sun, which is this crown of superheated plasma at about 1,000,000 Kelvin, one of the hottest parts of the sun.
Yeah.
And it extends 8 million miles above the surface of the sun, right? Many, many solar radii. And it is your once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in Rochester, New York, you should not miss it, to witness the corona of the sun. And what happens then is you're not just in the path of a shadow, you get this sort of awe effect, this switch flips in your brain, and you realize, one, how the sun is the lord of our solar system, and in fact, it occupies a much larger fraction of the sky than you think it does.
Yeah.
But also it makes us feel cosmically connected, right? That moon, right? This is a debris, a 4.6 billion year old piece of debris from when a Mars-sized object impacted our planet, our proto-Earth, turned the crust of our planet into a magma ocean. Debris from that material.
The debris spun off and
exactly
ends up in Earth orbit.
Right outside of the so-called Roche lobe of the orbit, the remnants of that impact solidified, became a sphere, and is our moon. And you just feel so connected to it when you can see that shadow. The sun goes away, the birds start to freak out. They have no idea what's going on.
I've heard that's true, right? That wildlife
It starts to feel a little bit cooler. The temperature
Yeah.
actually does drop a little bit because you're actually literally in a shadow.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And it's magical. And there will be no chance to view this in the state of New York until, let me get this right, 2079, and then the next one will be 2144. So now's your chance.
Which will really stretch my ability to
Stretching all of ours.
live
Hate to
on
say it.
for a long period of time. It's sort of interesting because the connection to the moon. I was a young boy when we landed on the moon.
Yeah.
And many people alive, most people probably alive now, weren't alive during the lunar landings. We're going back, of course. That's the plan. So this will probably generate interest in all of that. But this is really a pretty exciting time. To your point earlier, when I took physics in high school, and yes, I did pass my physics regents, which I'm very proud of. Many of the things that we studied then are no longer part of what's taught. I mean,
We're losing that
so
institutional
much.
memory.
Yeah, but a lot of it even turns out not to be true, I guess, or at least
Sure,
been modified. So we now have questions about whether dark matter, which everyone thought existed, even though couldn't find it. Now there's a new theory that maybe it doesn't exist at all. But it's sort of interesting how much we've learned in the last 30, 40 years about the nature of the cosmos that we would not have known. And it seems like almost every day there are new discoveries, new theories. Tell me why that's important and why, and what your hope is in terms of encouraging young people to study the sciences and study technology and innovation.
100%. Investment in that gee whiz science that doesn't have an obvious business model or a contribution to the solo residual is so fundamentally important. Not just to, expanding this brand new exponentially opening discovery space, but also inspiring that next generation of explorers, transferring of these national core competencies from one generation to the next, like X-ray, optics, metrology expertise in Rochester. It is hard to overstate how much we're learning about the cosmos by just putting big pieces of glass in the sky and pointing on Earth, building great ground and space-based telescopes. And it's hard to overstate the societal return on investment that those investments create, right? It's not just about science papers and press releases in the New York Times. It really is about showing those kids and the national and global public that nature is as magical as they believed as kids.
And the truth is, although to your point that there may not be immediately clear what commercial use some of this discovery will have, but the truth is, and I think back to the time again when I was a young boy watching the Mercury, Gemini, Apollo missions, how much we were able to adapt that science into material sciences and communication advancements and miniaturization and the computers we now have today. I mean, much of that came out of that research that we use literally on a daily basis.
The return on investment is astonishing, and it's fractal. It seeds through all levels of society, from the metal detectors to technologies you use every day. It's really hard to overstate how that taxpayer investment returns on the long time scale and also on the short run, right? So it's kind of where we're doing the things now, cosmic discovery, that will be, humanity, our species, will get one sentence to write in the book of the universe, right? We are a blip of cosmic structure. We're going to be gone before we know it, right? This is our opportunity to leave a ripple in the memory of the cosmos, right? By learning as much as we can in the time we have now when we have the ability to do it, because those investments are worth it societally.
Yeah, sort of like, was it Carl Sagan who said we're all stardust?
We are stardust. So Rochester's Great Observatory actually proved that. So the Chandra X-ray Observatory shows us that we are literally star stuff. We are literally made of star stuff.
And so talk a little bit about, well, one thing I wanted to just comment on, because you raised this and I was thinking about it. In the 1950s, the United States invested as a percentage of GDP about 0.6% in 0.6% in R&D. In the 60s, during the height of the space race, it was literally a full 2% of GDP was what the United States was investing. We're back down to about 0.6% and declining. I had dinner with my friend Ponch, who's the head of the National Science
and we know
Foundation.
Ponch,
Talking about this need to continue to invest, particularly we're going to, as America, going to be world leaders in science and discovery. So it really is important to increase that investment because of partly because of basic science, but also the kinds of things we learn from it.
100. Congressman, I want to be frank. We are on the edge of ceding leadership in fields that we have led for decades, right? And that leadership is important, not just geopolitically, but it's important for our next generation of explorers in the United States. And these investments are worth it.
And look, I assume this is true of every generation that feels like it's living in a time of great change and innovation. But it's really hard to compare this in terms of the speed, particularly which things mature and the speed with which things change, the amount of innovation. But this is an extraordinary time, whether it's AI or whether it's the advances in quantum computing and quantum communications. And there's just so many things that are going on, which I think leads people sometimes to be unsettled because it feels unsettling. But despite the unsettled nature of it, it's also extraordinary when you think of what things will be different 5 years from now than there are today. I just think back 10 years ago, some of the things that we now use in our daily lives we wouldn't have had access to and wouldn't have been able to take advantage of.
It's truly unbelievable. We are in the age of the accelerated expansion of discovery, right? And not just cosmic discovery, but AI, all the things you mentioned. And on all time scales, tomorrow, 5 years, decade, century, it is hard to imagine what the world will look like. Everything is changing rapidly. It can be unsettling, but I'll remind you that in the 1920s, it was federally funded, gee whiz, no business model research that ultimately gave birth to the internet, right? As part of, investments in information theory, these completely hard to understand papers in the 1920s. And now the internet is what? A huge fraction of the global economy, right?
Right.
And what will...
And it's not only gone from, I remember the days, the first time I went online with the
Yeah, that's right, yeah. I'm old enough to remember, I remember, yeah.
And then I thought a friend of mine who was very much into computer code and got me on. I said, this is great. What do I do with it?
Yeah, right.
And you think about how that went from being kind of like almost a curiosity.
It was
a
plaything,
Yeah, now it's hard to imagine literally living your life and your necessities without it. I mean, it's really extraordinary. From ordering supplies for home, getting a Uber ride, ordering groceries, paying your bills. I mean, it really is become sort of central to our lives. It's really extraordinary in a relatively short period of time.
The world changes fast, and science can be a path to unlocking better lives for all. The discovery of antibiotics is arguably one of the greatest discoveries in all of human history.
Right.
Because prior to that, you'd get a cut, and then it was heads or tails whether you survived that.
Right.
This stuff is worth it.
Yeah.
It's hard to overstate.
So before a couple of the questions about 230 million light years away is where your favorite galaxy is?
Oh yeah, it's I did my PhD thesis at RIT on a
What's the name of the galaxy?
Abell 2597, the brightest cluster galaxy in Abell 2597. It's a spectacular cosmic fountain. And the Chandra X-ray Observatory really discovered that this thing is this incredible, the supermassive black hole, the center of this galaxy, is outputting like a trillion atomic bombs per second of energy into this big ball of plasma that this galaxy sits in.
And you're looking at it as it existed 230 million years ago.
Yeah, that's right. The light travel, that's right, yeah.
I mean, it's really, it is extraordinary. Now, did you really write a book that said, what do black holes eat for dinner?
Yeah, I did. It was a kid's book.
So if you're pretend that I'm your 5-year-old son, what do black holes eat for anything in their path, I guess?
Anything in their path, yeah. And they're not cosmic vacuum cleaners to dispel a misconception, but yes, this is an immensely massive object in Abell 2597 and in the center of our galaxy, and yes, anything in their path.
And it's really sort of interesting that this is really show you what kind of geek I am. I remember in the movie Interstellar, with the depiction of the black hole. 100%. And of course, the event horizon is where the light, just at the edge, right, can, after that, which it can't escape any longer. Even light can't escape the gravitational pull. But I remember watching it and then reading about it afterward, that they had subjected what they knew about a black hole to a supercomputer, created the visual, which scientists said, we didn't even know that that's what it would look like. But it seems to be pretty accurate in terms of its depiction of what a black hole looks like.
You're a member of Congress. I'm sure your schedule's very packed, but I have to tell you, time doesn't actually exist.
No,
not in
it's
the way
all
you
relative,
think it does.
right?
Yeah, space and time are the same thing fundamentally, deep down in the laws of nature. And so black holes warp that fabric of space-time. And if you were to watch a second hand on a clock as it fell toward a black hole, that second hand would literally stop when it hit the event horizon.
Because time stops at the event horizon.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is really something that's really difficult to get your head around.
Really hard to understand, but experimentally proven, by the way.
Yeah. Last thing, what kind of pitch do you, if you're talking to high school students, middle school students, what do you tell them about why they should pursue a career in this, or why when they're looking at that solar eclipse on April 8th in Rochester, what kind of rewards do you think there are in this business, that in this area of discovery, that would really get them to be interested in this subject?
Absolutely. We're lucky in astronomy in that the data that we return from the sky is a seed corn of global inspiration, right? And I don't care whether you go on and build particle colliders, or become a teacher, or want to go into biology, or a career in discovery. Discovery is one of the animating forces of the human experience, right? Children are born and you're scientists in this primordial world, right?
Right.
You don't understand any of it, and so you have to figure it out, and so you have to kind of be a scientist. So every child at birth, before they can walk and speak, is kind of a scientist in that sense. So everybody is a scientist, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not. And it's hard to overstate what discovery is for humanity. It's one of the lifebloods of our species. It's one of the things we leave behind.
It is fascinating to watch, and I have grandchildren, so I see this as they're getting older, how they see the world in ways that you wouldn't expect because you've become an adult. I remember my grandson was learning his letters and was practicing them, did all his different letters and said, "Papa, what does this say?" He just assumed if he wrote the letters, it must say words, and words are in books. So it's fascinating to see how children sort of navigate the world, which they're discovering for the very first time.
100%.
And I guess that's the joy that you get in your job, being able to look at things and discover things that no one else has ever discovered, and to look into, try to tap into what is that, and how do I make sense of that, and how does that help us get some kind of understanding of not only the world around us, but the universe, the great universe around us. So
it's been one of the greatest gifts of my life, enabled, by the way, by the city of Rochester, New York.
You are good. I'm going to put you in a Chamber of Commerce video.
Hey, all right.
We would love to have you come back to Rochester, and we'll get to spend some time together. I'm really, really excited that you were able to join us, Dr. Grant Tremblay from Harvard.
Smithsonian,
Smithsonian, which we're grateful for the Smithsonian for the incredible work they do. But we're so grateful for all of your good work, and really grateful that you will be able to spend some time with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Congressman. It's been an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
April 8th, the solar eclipse in Rochester, New York, totality at
3:20 p.m. So it begins. Oh gosh, I don't want to get this wrong.
Let's say be prepared from 3 o'clock on.
Be watching at 3. It's like a 74-minute process. Beginning at 3:20 p.m. 3 minutes and 38 seconds of totality. Be there. Then you can. Oh wait. Sorry. Please.
Yes.
Before you're in totality.
Yes.
You wear these. Don't look directly at the sun. As Vice President of the American Astronomical Society, I'm contractually obligated to tell you that.
Yeah, you got to put the glasses on. You may look silly, but you're going to love it.
But then when the disk of the moon is fully in front of the sun, you can start to see the corona. Please take them off for 3 minutes.
Yeah, no longer.
No longer. We don't want any lawsuits, And look at the majestic corona of the sun. It's one of our biggest and most direct connections to the cosmos.
Yeah. Thanks again for being with us. Make sure you see it, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, sir.